This morning, I offer some advice. If you are an unmarried man, these are the qualities and virtues that you should seek in your future bride. Chris Palma, I'm talking to you. She manufactures cloth and sews clothing of such quality that her family looks like royalty. And she will stay up all night making extra clothing and then sell it for a profit. She goes far away and finds good food, brings it home, and then cooks it. She buys fertile land and plants a vineyard by herself. She gives to the poor. With great skill, she manages her household staff. She is happy, kind, trustworthy, and wise, and she eagerly looks to the future. If you are an unmarried woman, please know that men may have unreasonable expectations. And so might future mothers-in-law. This passage from Proverbs contained the advice of a queen mother to a prince who might well need it. She pointed out that charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. These, no doubt, were the only qualities that the prince had been seeking. Now, when I read this, I thought of the Stepford Wives. But when this was read aloud in Old Testament times, and we hear some of it even in our time, I can imagine that all of the people within earshot were laughing. Whatever their expectations for their spouses had been, they instantly recognized this list as unrealistic. And yet, our relationships endure so much conflict that is caused by our expectations of others. For example, I got a call from a friend a week after his wedding. He was distressed because his bride had just said, "This marriage isn't working." I inquired about the problem. It was toothpaste. One of them had expected that when married they would both use the same brand of toothpaste. Fearing that I would be unable to burst out laughing, I referred them to their priest for wise counsel. They worked it out, along with 1,000 other things, and are approaching their 21st anniversary. Here's another example. A woman expected to save her new husband from alcoholism. She knew that she could change him and that they would live happily ever after. We can imagine how that turned out. Jesus' 12 disciples argued about which one of them was the greatest. That meant that if one was the greatest, then 11 would be lesser. And inappropriate expectations would lead to inappropriate relationships. They only reflected their society. Someone was always greater and others were always lesser. It was expected. Jesus turned that upside down. He took a little child into his arms, someone from whom no greatness could be expected at that time, someone who had a very low social status and no economic utility. And Jesus said that whoever wants to be first of all must be last of all and servant of all. He equated himself with the child, saying, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me and the one who sent me." This begins with a right relationship with God. The Queen Mother of Proverbs had that advice for the prince. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Another way of saying, seek a wife who is in right relationship with God, because such a person will be a blessing to you and to the community. Now, what does that mean, fear of the Lord? Well, at the beginning of Proverbs, we're told that fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. This is really reverence. And without reverence, we cannot know the Lord. Without reverence, we cannot really know those important people in our lives. And so right relationships and realistic expectations are impossible without reverence. The rest of that line from the beginning of Proverbs is this: fools despise wisdom and instruction, so do not marry a fool. That is the teaching of Proverbs. Jesus taught that we are in right relationship with others when we adjust our expectations of ourselves. That is, we do not have expectations for others. Rather, each of us has an expectation only for his or her own self. I must expect to be the servant. I must expect to be the last. And if I warmly welcome people whom our society judges to be of low status, people who are of no use to me, then I welcome Jesus and the Father, and I will be in right relationship with everyone, myself, other people, and God. In short, I am to have reverence for everyone, absolutely everyone. What would our relationships be like if each of us had reverence for everyone? If each of us expected of ourselves only to be a servant? What would our church be like? Our city? Our country? Our election? I think it is a reasonable expectation for each of us, and perhaps some good advice from the Queen Mother of Proverbs and from our Lord. Amen.